Hi, welcome to 2025 and the first Feature Spotlight webinar of the year. It's good to be with you. I'm Dale Franks, and today we have a little bit to talk about, so let's jump right into it. So welcome to the webinar. We are going to talk about a couple of important things today. Number one, there are some changes on the support site and some changes, a minor change to how tickets are submitted. I'll cover that in just a second and the reasoning behind those changes, give you an update on the release status of version 6.1.300. And with 6.1.300, there are a couple of new features beyond the big obvious one of Office 365 for collaborative document authoring. And there's some bug fixes that we're still working on for 6.1.300. And that's what we'll talk about today. Let's start with the support site. Most of you, in fact, if I were to look over the list of people who are in the webinar today, I would say that probably all of you are Process Director customers. But Process Director isn't the only product that BP Logix makes. We make some use case applications. These use case apps, there is PubPro for regulated life sciences, publication, review and approval. There is Appruvio, which is a more generalized document approval application. Mirador for medical information requests. These extra apps are built on the Process Director platform, but those customers don't tend to buy the platform. They buy just those apps for their business. The trouble is that app support is not Process Director support, and the nature of application issues are generally fundamentally different than the nature of Process Director tech support issues. Customers of the apps are really buying consumer off-the-shelf software, and so they're not building their own applications as part of Process Director. So we can't really continue to combine app support and Process Director support into the same process. Not only are the processes sort of diverging, but the personnel who get assigned to different types of tickets are also diverging as well. So what that means is that we are going to have to make a change, and indeed have made a change on the support site when it comes to requesting a technical support ticket or creating a technical support ticket. So now you have to choose the support type you're asking for. And based on the support type you choose, you're going to see a different form. Now, both of these forms have some commonalities because obviously we need an explanation, for example, of what the issue is. However, if you're an application customer, the Process Director version is completely irrelevant to you because you are not working in, well, you are working in Process Director. You just don't know that you're working in Process Director. So the Process Director version is completely foreign to you. Now that we have this basic piece added to the support of being able to get different types of support, we may add some other support types too. For example, one of the things that we've been talking about over the past week is maybe adding a third type of support for direct assistance requests. So rather than going through the tech support process, you can just put in a direct assistance request that would almost certainly be handled differently than a tech support request. It would probably go to different people. And so being able to put these pieces in allows us to scale out technical support to handle a whole bunch of other different scenarios should we decide to do that. Now, there is a minor inconvenience that is attached to this in terms of submitting a tech support ticket, but I think the inconvenience is far outweighed by the efficiency with which we can now handle those requests. So on the support site now, when you go to the BP Logix technical support site, so far nothing has changed. You still have the link up here to submit a tech support issue, or you still have the link down here to submit a support ticket. However, when you get to the submission page, you have a drop-down control for you to pick the type of support that you are looking for. So if you are looking for process director support, that is one of the two types of support requests that we are now taking. So as of now, we have bifurcated support into application support for PubPro and Appruvia and Mirador, and process director support request for process director. If you pick process director support request, you won't really see anything different now. Well, actually, you will see something different now, because there used to be a checkbox on here for one of our applications, the vaccine tracking application. And there used to be a checkbox here that you would check if this was a vaccine tracking application. One of the things you may have noticed in recent times when you went to Process Director version was that it also included Appruvia and PubPro in this dropdown. And that was kind of how we were shoehorning in support requests for those applications. That's all gone now. So you don't see that in the Process Director version, and you don't see the checkbox for the vaccine tracking app. Other than that, everything that you see here is going to be exactly the same. Now, if you are doing an application support request, I don't think anyone here is going to be doing that, but should you do so, you have something slightly different. First, you have an application name dropdown so that you can pick the application that you're working on. And then you have your subject and your description and your severity and the ability to add any attachments that you need to add. This is largely the same as the BP Logix tech support. In terms of process, not much has changed. These forms, while different, are implemented below the ticket level. So everything else about your support tickets will remain the same. The SLAs for the severity levels 1 through 4, our required response times, all of that stuff, none of that will change. And largely, those are also applicable to support requests as well. So the ticket is a higher level object than the form that you use to create the ticket. So we can have multiple forms to handle multiple ticket types, and then based on the type of form it is, we can route those tickets differently to different people. So it's not a huge impact to you, other than the fact that you have to now choose your support request type. So whenever you open this form, presumably all of you will be just checking Process Director support request. It will give you the appropriate form. The form is now slightly easier for you to fill out since we removed that checkbox. Not that any of you were checking that box anyway. You were just ignoring it. So now there's one less thing to ignore whenever you submit your tech support ticket. So that's the tech support change. It is, like I said, a very minor inconvenience to the way that support tickets have been submitted in the past, but I think it will allow us to help you a lot better as we move on into the future. So let's talk about version 6.1.300. Right now it's running on internal servers. In fact, we're going to see it here in just a second. The holdup on 6.1.300 is the use of Office 365 for collaborative document authoring. That's an extraordinarily complex task to get it to work. It was pretty easy to implement CDA using the OnlyOffice service. OnlyOffice works well for a lot of things, but we have come up with some drawbacks to it. One of which is the support problem, which is that OnlyOffice is a black box and it's not really associated with Microsoft. And they handle support issues with OnlyOffice. And they're a third-party service. If there is a support issue, having to go through OnlyOffice puts us in the position of asking them a question, and then we're kind of at their mercy. And we can't go in and fix it, right? Because OnlyOffice is a black box. I think we can make the similar argument that Office 365 is a black box too. So if there's something wrong with Office 365, Microsoft is not going to help us. However, the difference is that with Office 365, you're using your own version of Office 365, your own licensed version. You can store the documents that are collaboratively edited and authored on your own Office 365 system. Because it's your system, that also eliminates some of the security concerns that some customers have had, especially in the life sciences industry, and that's what's prompting this change. Of, hey, we don't, even though we don't think they store our data, we don't really want to trust a third-party service like OnlyOffice to edit what may be potentially sensitive proprietary information on their servers, and also information, since we're talking about life sciences, that might be covered under HIPAA. We would rather keep all of that in-house. And if we're going to edit it, we want to edit it on our own system where we know that all of that information stays, and we know that we have the appropriate business security and the appropriate HIPAA security in our own installations. So that is driving this move towards Office 365. Like I said, it's a very complex feature. Setting up OnlyOffice was really relatively simple. Microsoft has a whole bunch of other issues that have to be overcome to be able to make collaborative document authoring work inside OnlyOffice. And it requires substantial setup on the process director side as well. So in 6.1.300, and I guess we'll go back over here first. I was prepared to show you this first, but I'm obviously out of order. So let's go into the installation settings for this installation. Go to the properties page. We'll go all the way down here to the bottom, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new properties on the properties page in installation settings that you have to configure to set up Office 365. 3 of these properties are your tenant ID, client ID, and client secret from Azure. So in order to make Office 365 work, you're going to have to go through the exact same process that you would go through to set up Microsoft's OAuth for SMTP, because to contact Office 365, you have to go through OAuth. So that means creating a certificate, going into Azure, creating your Active Directory registered application in Azure, from which you get the tenant ID and the client ID and the client secret. And then those have to be moved back over into Process Director through those properties as well. You've also got to specify the URL for your O365 setup. You've also got to specify the root folder in which you want to store your Office 365 documents. Now, as far as the OAuth goes, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. I believe the way it works is if you have already used Azure for SMTP OAuth, that means you already have the AAD registered app, which means you already know what your client secret and other OAuth information is. So you don't have to set up a separate OAuth, I don't believe. That may not be universally true. There may be instances where you might have to do that depending on what tenant you're using. It does get complicated. But if you're using the same tenant and you have Process Director already registered as an AAD registered app, then you can use the same client secret and stuff for your tenant ID and client ID for running O365 CDA. That is going to be highly dependent on your setup, though. So while it is possible that it is the same SMT, the same tenant ID, client ID, and client secret, it may also be possible that you're using a different tenant. And if you are, you're going to have a separate AAD registered app for that tenant. It's an Azure thing. I'm not an Azure specialist, but there is a good chance, as long as you're running off the same the same tenant, that you can run both your SMTP and your O365 CDA off of the same AAD registered app, which means the values for connecting both of those would largely be the same. However, you will still have to place them separately in both the SMTP tenant client and client secret and the SharePoint CDA client secret. So anyway, that's what we're working on. You would not believe the huge list of Jira tickets that have been required to get this working. I don't even know that this is working on this version that I have. I had them install it yesterday because I wanted to show the UI for some things. Which of these things actually work yet? I don't exactly know. So we can see the UI changes, but I'm not going to subject you to an unsuccessful test of this stuff on a brand new cutting edge version of 6.1.300. In any event, this is the holdup. This is what is keeping us from releasing it. Like I said, we have, as you can see, this installed on some internal servers. We're doing some testing. We actually have a running O365 CDA server that we're actually doing a lot of testing on to be sure that everything works. Being able to use O365 requires changes to everything: the attachment controls, the online form designer, the way that the back end handles documents. It's really, really complex. So even though we're testing it, and I think we're close, my estimate, and it is my estimate, is that we're still a couple of weeks to a month away from releasing 6.1.300. Could be wrong. We could come out with that sooner. That's just my estimate based on where we are and looking at the number of still open Jira tickets on the O365 CDA Epic, the overall project of getting O365 CDA in. However, because this is taking a little longer, our team is also able to implement some new features sort of in line with that as they come up. So in addition to the O365 CDA, we have some other things that we're adding as well. First up is line wrapping for the data list, which is what we were trying to look at a second ago. And we'll have to go back and open this form. On the data list control, if you go to the columns tab, there is a new property for each column called wrap text. As you can see, by default, it is checked. And what this means is that whenever you run the data list, instead of truncating the items that you see in each column off of a single line, you can optionally, and it is the default option, you can wrap text in those columns. So if it takes 5 lines of text to show all of the data in a particular column, then we can just wrap that text and show you that entire column with the text wrapped instead of just truncating the text and showing everything on one single line. So that will, I think, make your data list controls a little bit more useful. Some additional security enhancements, as is the custom of my people. I will not tell you what those enhancements are, but as we move along, there is a regular routine of testing and checking, and as security issues arise from reports from the major bug reporting services, we can look and see if there's any effect of those newly discovered bugs on Process Director, and we can go in and make those fixes. Sometimes I'm sure you're aware that there are constantly little security glitches that show up in Windows that get publicly reported. And it's always wise whenever those things come up to see if you can be proactive in getting rid of some of those security issues. So we've done a whole bunch of stuff like increased security on cross-site scripting and cross-site impersonation and things like that. As always, trying to make the product more secure is one of our key goals, even if we can't be perfectly transparent about what exactly it is that we're doing for obvious reasons. Whenever you create a process that invokes a sub-process, you've always been able to take documents from the main process, send them down to the sub-process, do whatever manipulation you have to do. And then when the sub-process ends, take all of the sub-process documents and send them back up to the parent process. But that's only a single level of transfer. I can go to a parent to its direct child, and from a child back to its direct parent. I've had some customers who have said, I would like to go further than that because I don't just have children. I may have grandchild processes or great-grandchild processes. So that single level of transfer doesn't work for me. Okay, so fine. We have now implemented multi-level object transfer between instances. So I can get a parent form, for example, or a parent document attachment, not just down to the child and back, but down to the grandchild, and then all the way back up to the, I guess, grandparent process in that particular example, if I'm going 3 levels. So I can transfer those documents back and forth. So this multi-level object transfer, I think, is going to be a little more helpful. It's not something that's done a lot, but certainly for more complex and more edge use cases, being able to have that multi-level transfer of documents from parents all the way down to grandchildren or great-grandchildren is going to make those edge cases easier to implement. There are some new goal formatters for the goal system variable. Currently, whenever you have a goal system variable, it only returns whatever the current value of the goal is. There was a way to get other information back, but it was kind of unwieldy. So what we've done, and since I'm here, I didn't have a window open for that, but that's fine. We'll go to doc and we'll go to system variables because they're already documented. So at least I've managed to stay ahead enough to document it. So with the goal system variable, we now have some new modifiers. So there's a formatter, format equals, and we can now pull the last time the goal was evaluated, the next time it is expected to be evaluated, and the previous value. Now, prior to 6.1.300, you could get the previous value. There was a previous value formatter equals 1, and it would pull the previous value. But we didn't have the last eval or next eval. And also, that's not perfectly in keeping with how we generally like the syntax of system variables to work. So we fixed it up so that we can now pull so if you just put goal, goal name, it's going to pull back whatever the current value is. But with the use of the formatter now, you can just go format equals, and then you can pull the last eval, the next eval, or whatever the previous value of the goal was. And this makes the goal, I think, a little bit easier to use and a little bit more understandable with how you're supposed to use it, and more in compliance with the way other system variables work. We've changed the manage task users CT just a little bit. That CT, and this is the form I want where I have it implemented. If we go to the Custom Task Event Mapping tab, I have the Manage Task Users custom task here. And previously, for this custom task, there were, depending on what you were going to do, a whole bunch of different failure messages based on how you were going to use it. Now we have added an optional success message. We've never had a success message before, and it's not a huge change, but we had a customer that said, hey, it's great that you can tell me why it failed. I'd like to be told that it worked. So we've added an optional success message that you can throw in there so that this custom task will throw a success message whenever it runs and runs successfully. Moving from new features to bug fixes, several bug fixes that are important. First, there was a database exception that was getting thrown when the timer was running. Also, when we talk about bug fixes here, I want to be clear about something. Some of these bugs are bugs that you are not going to see in Process Director, in the version that you have, whatever version that it may be. Some of these are bugs that we're finding as part of switching over to O365 CDA and doing some other work. So they're either bugs that are caused by some of the new development work because we're having to change how some things work. So we're catching bugs as they come up and fixing them. So some of these bugs are bugs that you probably aren't going to ever see. They're really internal bugs that we caught, but from my perspective, I don't know which ones are which sometimes. So I'm just writing release notes for all of them. And if you never see the bug, well, then you don't care. And if it doesn't matter because we fixed it in 6.1.300, however it came up, it's still fixed. So it still will never matter. But we were seeing some database exceptions getting thrown whenever the timers were being run. So we had to fix that. There was an issue with the jump to step custom task. The jump to step custom task is only usable in workflows. It was a real bug. It did exist in the custom task. We fixed it. It wasn't jumping to the step as expected in some circumstances. But like I said, this is a workflow custom task. Also, don't use workflows. Workflows, as you should be aware, have been deprecated in the product since 2017. Workflows have received no new functionality since version 4.5 of the product. So if you are making new applications, you shouldn't be using workflows, and indeed should not have been using workflows since 2017. I mean, it's right there in the documentation in a big purple box that says don't use workflows. So don't use workflows. However, for older customers who are doing legacy stuff, you have workflows that have been running for 10 years. Maybe you want to keep them running. So for legacy purposes, workflows are still in the product, and we still do bug fixes for workflow related issues. And this happened to be one of those. There was an issue with workspace switching with the 6.1 UI. I'm not sure if that ever made it out into public or not. I've certainly seen it on some of my dev versions, but in any event, workspaces can be switched now without problem. There was an issue with anonymous user task links. They weren't getting the proper task link ID in the emails that were being sent in the email notifications. That has been fixed. Some list boxes were showing square brackets around the text for some reason. Not sure why, but I am sure that they aren't doing that anymore. PDF conversions were not showing routing slips from the form whenever the form was converted to PDF. We managed to fix that. Another little weird one, when you marked a control for deletion and you went to the form controls tab of the form definition, control might not actually appear even though it hadn't been formally deleted. It'd been deleted off of the form template in the online form designer, but it still should have showed up in the form controls tab so as marked for deletion so that you could delete it or refactor the values into another form field. We fixed that, so now that those controls show up. There's a couple of issues with the advanced reporting component in terms of Excel exports. One of which was there is an option to turn off formatting for data exported from the advanced reporting component to Excel. The thing is, you could check or uncheck that checkbox, and it didn't matter. It got exported with the formatting anyway outside of the advanced reporting component. So we fixed that. The second Boolean fields when you were importing Excel, and you had a Boolean field, and especially if the first field in that Boolean field was null, the export would fail. Boolean fields aren't supposed to be null. Boolean fields are supposed to be either, 1 or 0. There should only be one of two values. They shouldn't be null. So Excel imports that had null values in Boolean fields would fail. So we addressed that. We now treat Boolean fields as a 0, and they just get imported as false or unchecked. In the collaborative document markup editor, you're supposed to be able to customize the toolbars. For some reason, that toolbar customization stopped working, so you were stuck with the default toolbars. We fixed that to allow that CDM toolbar customization. There are several issues that refer to technical debt. That just means things that used to be done a certain way back in 2015, but it's 9 years later and we don't do things that way anymore. So technical debt is basically going back in and cleaning up a lot of the old way of doing things and redoing it in the modern way that we're expected to do in .NET. So, there's still a fair amount of, legacy code in there that was created in, 2010 or 2013 or 14. It was the way that we did things at the time, but 10 years is an eternity in development, especially in .NET development. Things just aren't done that way anymore. The .NET product has changed enough that there are easier, more efficient, and better ways of doing things. And so we're going through, our maintenance team goes through and routinely finds some of these technical debt issues and simply fixes them. It's not something that you'll see on the front end. You won't even notice, although you may notice it in terms of perceived performance, but there's nothing in the UI or just using the product that lets you know that we're fixing these technical debt issues. They're just being fixed, but they're generally hidden stuff in the background where we're just using the more modern technology to replace the old way of doing things in the product. And with that, we are done with this month's Feature Spotlight webinar. As always, thank you for joining me this month. I will look forward to seeing you either next month at the next Feature Spotlight webinar or on Thursday for the training webinar, which this week is going to be a rather complex webinar to do a rather complex thing, if memory serves me right. And so if you want to take a look at a little more advanced use case for Process Director, then maybe you'll be interested in joining me on Thursday. Otherwise, I'll see you next month. So long.